everybody, welcome to another episode of What a Hell of a Way to Die. It's Francis, and I have Steve Beynon with me today. Steve, who's a military.com reporter, has been on a couple of times. I love bringing on reporters because I read something and I'm like, there's obviously going to be more stuff about this. And I saw an article from you, Steve, that came across that said the headline is How a Church Allegedly Scammed Millions in VA Money from Vets. And you know what? I love a good cult. No cult is good, obviously, but a cult story that isn't like, when you think military cult, you think just the Marines in general, right? Mm-hmm. So, but this is something completely different. So, the first question I had for you is how did you start? Like, what was the first thread you started pulling on for this one to find the story?
Yeah. So, and stop me at any time. And I don't want to throw too much information too fast at your listeners because this is a story that gets confusing really quickly. It took me about a year to wrap my head around. There's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of characters. So just feel free to, stop me at any point to kind of go into something more. So this actually started unrelated. I was writing a story about Howard University, a very prestigious, historically black college in the DC area. And basically, they lost their GI Bill eligibility for a school, right? And that is a very rare thing to happen to a school. As all your listeners know, you can't just use your GI Bill however you want. It has to be at one of about 4,000 approved institutions. And Howard lost their eligibility. Long story short, they made a lot of clerical errors for about a year, and they weren't getting paid on time. They weren't getting their benefits approved at all. And it screwed a lot of them over. A lot of them had to go find different housing. They were looking to move schools and all sorts of stuff. It was a disaster. And I was talking to some veteran advocates, mainly with Veterans Education Success. They are a GI Bill lobbying group, essentially. They're the ones that raise a lot of education issues on Capitol Hill and stuff like that. So I was talking about this Howard situation, and basically their bottom line was, Howard screwed up. It's a good school that seemed to have some bad staffing on veteran benefits.
It's one of those. It's not. They didn't lose it because they're shady. They lost it because they fucked up paperwork. Which, if you spent more than a day in the military, you will recognize. Oh, I'm being screwed because somebody fucked up paperwork. How new and original.
Yeah, Howard is an otherwise great university. It just sucked to be a veteran there for a couple of months. Their bottom line was, they're bad. Yeah, the VA needs to crack on them. And long story short, they got their eligibility back. And when these advocates were telling me, they were like, hey, this school's bad, but there's just like the way the VA is policing GI Bill eligibility is weird because, yes, this school should be punished in whatever administrative way is appropriate. But and they listed off a bunch of different things like weird trucking schools, dog training school that has been accused of abusing animals. And then they said, and there's a cult down south. And I said, hold on. What? we gotta pause on that. And these schools are greenlit. The VA delegates that authority to SAAs, state-approved agencies. Each state and territory has one. And they're basically just regulators that make sure a school is legitimate and they follow the VA's guidelines. But the issue is these SAAs police schools with different levels of scrutiny. So the District of Columbia was very harsh on Howard, while multiple states, including Georgia, North Carolina, Washington, Texas, let this cult go on for years, scamming about $7 million worth of GI Bill money, and the school is still functioning.
Yeah, I went to a questionable college as well, but my college doesn't exist anymore. But it did give me an education, and I do have a good normal job. Outside of podcasting, which is my own broken brain kind of thing anyway. But, I will my old school, which is Vatterott, maybe it was more of a scam school. Maybe it wasn't. I liked all of my teachers. I learned some things there, but this sounds like it's completely out of left field. Because when I was reading it, I was like, okay, people being scammed into giving money to a church. That's nothing new. That's literally how churches function. One way you want to call it a scam, you want to call it tithing, however you want to say it. Churches function off of you give me money and I give you the word of God and whatever other things that come with being a church. And it floored me that these people were stealing GI money benefits, and like how easy apparently it is to just become a school. And to be fair, we did just see a Family First PAC become a church recently for tax purposes. Yeah. So like, there's a lot of loosey-goosey kind of nonsense going on when it comes to law and people with money. As two people without money, we tend to get the short end of that stick.
Yeah, and then the way the VA side of the story, and even like the advocates will agree here, is it is loosey-goosey. There probably does need to be a little bit more oversight. And I talked to some staffers on Capitol Hill too, and they all kind of agree that this is the worst case scenario. I found just the most extreme example of abuse of taxpayer funded entitlements for veterans. The whole like, hey, all government money is transferred with a leaky bucket. Water's always going to fall out. You're always going to have these weird schools here and there. But the reason like it's not super tight on who can and can't be a school is it's always over fears of the bureaucracy being too much and like hampering veterans on who may want to go to a non-traditional school. Not everyone wants to go to a state school, like a pilot school, trucking school, maybe some like blue collar trade school. And it kind of what is sort of loose regulatory guidelines allows people to be a little bit more free with their GI Bill. And generally that is has been successful, at least up until this cult news came out.
Yeah, I got 8 months of GI Bill left. I've been trying to figure out what I want to do with it. My local community college does have marijuana horticultural classes, so
that might be fun.
Gonna have the government pay to teach me how to grow weed.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. But like a Bible school is not new. Churches taking advantage of people is not new. What makes this interesting is they started, so the church is called House of Prayer. They have locations all over the country. They're always within about 8 miles of, most of the time it's Army bases. And they had schools in Washington, Clayton, Texas, Fayetteville, North Carolina, and Hinesville, Georgia, and Augusta, Georgia. And so what they did was basically from the start, when this church started in around 2003 by this guy named Ronnie Dennis, who's actually a veteran himself. He only served a couple years. He was in an admin role, served in Korea, had a very unremarkable military career. From the start, this church was built to drain veterans and active service members of every single penny they're worth. It goes beyond the GI Bill, but the GI Bill was the focus point. They started the Bible school pretty much when the church started. They would charge students about $300 a semester to go to it, and it was a simple. If the way it's been described to me as the guy who started the school is, it was effectively a Sunday school. You wouldn't notice a difference. You go there, you study some verses in the Bible, you leave. And then in 2013. That is when they got approved for GI Bill use. And that is also when they raised the semester cost from $300 to about $3,000. And that's sort of where the scam begins. And they get these students in. There's no diploma. There's no certification. They just keep them in the school until they're out of GI Bill benefits. And they would even rename classes. There's only so many classes they had. You can't take the same class twice with the GI Bill. So when a student was exhausted of their benefits, they would just rename the course so they could take it again.
Okay, so we've got we've got a scam school. It took them 10 years to get this, though, from 2003 to 2013, and here we are, about 10 years later. Where exactly does where does this stand now? Like, is there somebody pushing back against this? Are there regulations that are trying to be put into place so that something like this specifically? Like, I know we can. We can have all the conversations we want about dog grooming schools or trucker schools or pilot schools and whether or not they are useful. But like at the end of the day, you should be coming out of there with like some kind of certificate or something that says, I did this thing and I'm qualified to do this thing. And so, and I'm not, going to ask you to speak on like, what does or doesn't make a school that counts for VA benefits, but why exactly has this been going for 10 years?
Frankly, so this, this all culminated to last month when the FBI raided 5 of these churches. They went in, they got cash, computers, records, everything they could get. This church has been under surveillance by the FBI for most of these 20 years, even before they were GI Bill approved. It wasn't always the school. They also have this. Ronnie Dennis, the leader of the church again, has this massive real estate empire that is mostly supported with VA home loans. He would get veterans in the church, convince them to use their VA home loans. Once they get the house, they would rent the house out, often to another member of the church, right? And so the veteran who got the house, they're paying the mortgage, right? And then the church is making rent money off the person living in the house. And then also other times they would flip that. And then at least 30 occasions that I found, this is just 30 documents that I found. I'm sure it's the scope is way bigger, of these veterans signing power of attorney to the church. And then since then, the FBI has been investigating them since at least 2007. They never really found anything. They dropped the investigation in 2017. They were focusing on that real estate angle. Didn't find anything. I talked to a couple of law enforcement sources that long story short, basically said something to the amount of real estate fraud is a very hard case to build. It's horrible. These people were taken advantage of, but you're not breaking the law having people sign houses to you or renting out people's houses. That's a very hard case for a prosecutor to build. So the FBI dropped that in 2017 and then shifted over to this school issue, because that is where we're actually getting something. Students described when VA inspectors would come by, they would build classrooms. They would get desks, make rooms look like classrooms. Syllabuses would be fabricated. Again, classrooms will be changed. So that is something that law enforcement was actually able to nail the church on.
So they're no longer GI Bill certified, or is that still one of those kind of coming things in the wake of an FBI investigation?
Correct. So the bulk of the schools are on a 60-day suspension period that'll end at the end of next month. But that is a very typical practice that gives the school the time to basically build their case. But honestly, I don't see how they're going to get their eligibility back. So I wouldn't read into the temporary suspension as we did it. Yeah. I wouldn't read it as a soft thing. That's a very typical thing the VA will do.
I will say something interesting is that Fort Stewart specifically put it in on their off limits list, which, generally when you go to a military base and especially if you're visiting, you'll get in the barracks, you'll get the just BT dub while you're here. Here's the places where you might get stabbed with a screwdriver if you go there looking like a soldier. And usually those are bars and strip clubs that are kind of outside of, skirting the edges of the law. Places that are, the most fun places to go. However, this sounds like something that, they are specifically no, you cannot, you should not be going to this. Like Fort Stewart has known for years at this point, this is a dangerous place. And we know about it, but it seems like they can't do anything about it other than say, don't go there, telling troops that they can't go there.
No, correct. And this church is frankly really dangerous for soldiers. And I want to be very clear. They're still operating. There's been no arrests at all. I mean, the FBI raided, but they just took stuff. So they're not, they lost their GI Bill eligibility, but there's nothing stopping them from continuing real estate fraud and general manipulation of veterans. And one of the key things they would do is junior members are especially susceptible to this. The church will go onto bases, often because a lot of the church's members are soldiers themselves. So there's nothing preventing them from going on these bases. And I'll tell you one story in particular about a woman I talked to who's in the story. She was actually at Campbell. She gets involved with the church. She's new, young, doesn't know what's going on and just wants to get involved in a church. And she said things are great. The church is known to love bomb people. A term for a lot of affection very quickly. And they help her out with everything she needs. So she needs a ride to Walmart, she needs home cooked meals. They do that for her. So they cement themselves as being a very big part of her life. And then one day they show up to her barracks, right? And they say, hey, barracks are unsafe for women. You can get sexually assaulted here. It's a huge problem in the Army. She digs in saying, hey, no, I'm fine. I'll stay in the barracks, right? Fast forward only a couple of days, she gets sexually assaulted. And now what the church has done is now she sees the church as like a savior, be like, hey, the church told me something would happen. It actually happened. And now she moves into the church, right? They have this whole dormitory set up, and junior enlisted members are not allowed to live outside the barracks, but they'll do it anyway. She'd wake up at 3:30 in the morning to get back to her barracks so no one would know she ever left. And then she has to pay rent to live in the church. So they're taking her pay at that point, and they're making her do chores. The women would often cook and clean, and men would often do more manual labor tasks, general maintenance of the building, landscaping, roofing, that kind of stuff. So she would spend hours of her day working for this church, paying rent, and then having to get up very early in the morning to be at her barracks so her leadership would be none the wiser. And they would take her to the front of the church on Sunday. They blamed her for her own sexual assault and said, this is what happens. God can't protect you when you go outside of his will. And that was a horrifying moment for her. And that is how she became manipulated, involved in the church for years. They took a horrifying event, they made friends with her, and they put themselves in this position to where they're the only thing that can protect her. And going to the barracks, I talked to a soldier that was kicked out of the Army because they found out he was living in these barracks. And it goes even deeper. They get you in the barracks. Yes, they want you to pay rent, and that's a scheme. That's another scheme to make money. But what this does and what makes it a cult is they want to take you away from any outside influence, right? And so once they get you in, that's when the arranged marriages start. One woman I talked to, they promised her after deployment, they found a husband for her. I talked to a couple that was married in the church. The church married them 3 weeks after they met. And sometimes these are two very young women. The age of consent in Georgia is 16. I talked to one woman, her daughter was approached by a pastor saying, hey, it's about time for you to get married. The girl was 14, and then the pastor said, hey, talk to me when you're 16. Right. And so this is about controlling every aspect of people's lives. When you're married to someone outside the church, they wiggle in, they create wedges to get you divorced and to marry someone in the church. They don't want any outside influence. This is a church where it's about money. Ronnie Dennis has at least 3 very expensive homes that I know about that are worth about $2 million each. He has Rolls Royces. He has nice watches, nice suits. But I'm not too sure if the money is the real objective here. It just seems like control and power is the bottom line for House of Prayer.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the basics of every cult leader, and I'm sure that there's lots of people who have read way too much Helter Skelter that could dive deeper into it than I can with something like this. But that is like money is a big part of it, but power is always the top thing that you're kind of shooting for. Yeah. So we've now got arranged marriages. We've got people who are living outside of the barracks. How are they recruiting?
So like a normal church, if you took their recruiting out of context, it probably doesn't seem much more aggressive than Jehovah's Witness or Mormons or anything like that. They
which are very aggressive unnecessarily.
Yeah. They'll drive around bases. They'll roll up to people in vans and try to talk to them about the gospel. They'll park at PX parking lots. They'll go to the Walmart off base, and they'll just approach people in stores. They'll do cold calls, knocking on doors and barracks. And I talked to a little over a dozen members, and at first it doesn't come across as anything more than just a normal Christian church. You wouldn't notice anything for a while, and that's sort of how these people get sucked in. They don't really know what's happening, and this is how cults work. You get in, you think you're a normal church, and just it takes them years in therapy to realize what happened to them. Right? It's the leadership, specifically Ronnie Dennis, does a little bit every single day. They ask a little bit more of you, and it might sound crazy, like, what do you mean you gave this church $40,000 of your GI Bill money, your house, most of your Army pay, you left the barracks, you're taking this abuse from them, and you married someone they assigned to you? Like, what do you mean? But like, they do this stuff gradually. They don't do it the first day that you're there. The first couple years you're there, you're just, I don't know, running a bake sale for them, right? It comes across as very normal. And it's like an abusive spouse. They slowly pull you away from your entire life. You just don't even notice it until, not even when it's happened, but until you're away from it. And that's why it's so hard for people to break away from cults. They don't know they're in one.
Yeah, I mean, once you're in it, everybody else is crazy. Like, why wouldn't you come join this and give all of your money to this random guy here? As you said, the pulling people into the barracks, pulling people away, it minimizes the chances of one of your NCOs saying, "What the fuck, dude? You're in a cult. Stop it."
Yeah,
and dragging you, at least attempting to drag you out of something like that.
And like the biggest thing was, I mean, we talked about the GI Bill, that you got to think about how much money that is for a church. I mean, it's a lot of money for a state school. Like, hey, you're coming in, you're spending $40,000. Like, that's a lot of money for a tiny church. And I want to emphasize, like, I like people to go check out the story, because we got some photos that they gave us a tour, and it's not even a mega church, right? This isn't a Joel Osteen like stadium, extravagant thing with a coffee shop in it. It is a very, very modest church. There's nothing special about us. So all this money that's being made, just the GI Bill, $7 million. That's not even getting into the real estate stuff, the rent people are paying to live there, and the free labor, and the disability fraud. We can get that into that next.
Well, I'm curious about with the VA loan fraud, because I own a house and I got it through VA, and the great thing about the VA is you don't have to pay the down payment on it, right? It just gets kind of rolled into your into the mortgage. But the problem with that is that if when you do that, that has to be your permanent residence. Like, you can't use VA loan to get a rental or to get like an apartment complex or something like that. You can use it to get the house that you are going to live in, your home of record. So it sounds like what's happening is somebody will use the VA loan they'll use the VA to get the house with no money down. They start paying the mortgage, and then somebody else starts living in it, and that is VA fraud right there, like straight
Correct.
up.
Yeah. So maybe they even do live there for a little bit, or move out right away, or not move in at all. It's varied so much. But yeah, that's the bottom line. You get a house, someone else is renting out, and then maybe you either go rent some crappy apartment in town, or maybe you go live at the church. So the church is making money from you two ways. They're getting the money off your house, and they're getting money from you paying rent in the church. So they're getting it all the way, right?
And you still have to pay the mortgage on the house.
Yeah.
So you're still shelling out for a house that you don't live in, and now you have to pay for another place to live in while somebody pays the church to live in your place.
Right. And this went on for 20 years, and it is still ongoing. I mean, I want to say, like, the FBI raid was specifically about the GI Bill. They looked into this real estate stuff. Like I said, for about 15 years, the case didn't go anywhere. Maybe there's another open one I don't know about. But like I said, real estate stuff seems very complicated for a prosecutor to build the case. So I guess that's seemingly why they shifted over to education.
Yeah, and like you said, like there's a reason real estate is so lucrative. Is because it's not very well regulated at all. We had a president who was a real estate guy. You see how well that worked out for everybody.
And the key with everything too, right? That's two pillars: real estate and GI Bill, and like kind of the third leg was disability, right? People that had high disability ratings, they said, were treated like heroes there, not because they were heroic of however they got their injuries, but because of how much value they brought to the church financially. They could either donate most, if not all, that disability pay, or they also looked at it as, you can live off of that. You don't need a full-time job, so you can come do a lot of work for the church. Like, you don't need to work 40 hours a week. Work 15 hours a week at the grocery store, then come here and, mow the grass or do whatever's needed for the church. And it went as far as to Rodney Dennis had a guy on the inside, a source I talked to who still works at VA, obviously didn't give me his name because he's admitting to probably a felony of fabricating these disability claims. And if you look at what he told me, it's not much different than what you would probably tell a buddy going to the VA. Like, hey, exaggerate this. Don't tell him this when you show up. act like you're having your worst day, that kind of stuff, right?
Mhm.
It's not. It's stuff you get. Like, yeah, if my buddy was, had this issue, this is what I tell him. I get it, but
Everybody tries to juice the gentleman's 10% out.
yeah,
I get
no, yeah, no one has a problem with that. Well, except maybe the VA.
it.
But it's not. It wasn't. The motivation wasn't, hey, we have a lot of veterans and service members. Let's help them out. It was, let's make them money to donate to the church. That was the motivation, right? And the guy I talked to said there's probably at least 20 claims he processed or helped process in some way, shape, or form that were totally bogus.
So and they got him that job. Like the church was like, we need somebody specifically on the inside to do
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, they had an inside man.
Well, that's just fantastic. So what else? What else are we missing here? What other ways are they doing some fraud?
Yeah, I mean, this is probably the wildest, most complex, and systematic case of abuse and fraud of veteran and service member pay and benefits that's ever happened. This is the extreme case. This is the outlandish case. You had a guy getting rich. You had a guy that Ronnie Dis. He built a cult of personality that was completely funded off VA and DoD money. To again, like, these were very modest churches. He bought fancy cars, suits, houses, right? Had arranged marriages, ruined people's lives. One guy I talked to was kicked. The guy that started the school knew he was committing fraud, stayed there for years because his wife was so embedded in the cult and he was trying to get her out of it. And eventually he just couldn't take it anymore. He left and the wife kicked him out of the house and he was homeless for a while. So the thing to really think about is this is still ongoing, right? They did lose their GEI bill eligibility, but there's all these other pillars: the disability, the real estate, the general pay these service members make. That is still ongoing. No one's been arrested. This church is still operating almost as normal. They made $7 million off GI Bill money, but they've created this conspiracy of so many other pockets of cash flow that I don't think they're going to be hurting.
I like one of the pictures in the article is that brochure stand that like everybody sees like in every S1 shop, and just like, hey, are you having problems doing meth and having bad family, but also do you need GI benefits? Like, all those goofy pamphlets that everybody puts out. They have one at the church, but it seems to all be like, none of it's let's get you off of meth. It's more let's get you some dollars so you can funnel it directly into us.
Yeah. Every dollar they make is a dollar that can go to the church.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, Steve, I hope that you are able to stay up on this story, because this is one that, like I said, it was when I started reading it, I was like, there's got to be a weird thread that this came out of for you, and that all of a sudden it's like I mean, obviously the FBI knew about it, but you get more pressure on it the more people actually find out about it. So if you're in any of these areas, let's see, where do we got? We got like Fort Stewart. We've got one outside of Kentucky.
We got Hood, and I would love to hear from people. If anyone's out there, I think this is a story that is, I think, just beginning. I think you're going to hear a lot more from these people, and at some point, I would imagine charges have to be filed. So we'll be on that.
Hopefully. But yeah, if you're somebody, you want to talk to Steve, or you want to talk to me, you want to discuss any of this, if you've been involved in it or were a part of it for any reason, let us know, because this is obviously something that, like, look, I don't like when people screw over anybody. Like, I'm not one of those. Our vets deserve better. I do think we do, because we're treated like shit just like everybody else is. But these are normal people, like, that just happen to have like this ability for a cash inflow, and instead of enriching themselves by lying to the government, which I wholeheartedly agree with and give you the thumbs up to do it, they're enriching somebody else. And I don't like it when somebody else has got the really nice house while their people go homeless because they decided to leave the church. I left the Catholic Church. Nobody kicked me out of anything.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is a story about control. I'll give one kind of last specific example where a guy I talked to had PTSD, was injured from an IED blast in Afghanistan. He needed a lot of medication. They told him to stop taking it and to just rely on God. So this isn't just about taking money from people. This is about controlling them, marrying people off, controlling their medication, and creating a leader that they they want these people to believe it has all the answers.
Absolutely. So let's talk about some other messed up things that are happening at Fort Stewart, depending
Yeah,
on,
yeah.
you
Fort
know.
Stewart's having a bad week. I don't know why.
Look, every military base is going to be having a bad week pretty soon, and this is also Fort Carson, which I was at not too long ago. And I've never been active duty like garrison active duty. I've been active duty deployments and everything, but I've never like had to do the like just sit on a base like in the middle of nowhere and do your job at this base for longer than like a couple of weeks. So when I went to Fort Carson, they gave me a pretty nice place to stay. Actually, I think I was staying in a America's Best Inn off post, which is not a great place. It's not top tier hotel. It's the hotel that when you are doing government travel that you get to stay at, right? But even the America's Best is looking like a little bit better than the barracks that soldiers are having to stay in. We've talked about this a couple of times on the show, going years and years back, because it keeps fucking happening. It keeps happening where like soldiers just like, you have one option. You have to stay in these barracks here. You have to live here, and also you have to breathe in a bunch of black mold because we're just not actually going to do anything to fix any of this. So where is that right now? Because the last time I heard about it was the government was like, we signed a 99-year contract, so our hands are tied. You guys are just screwed for 100 years. But it feels like they're trying to, maybe like, oh, maybe letting babies get, black lung is bad. We shouldn't do that.
Yeah,
This whole thing that the military is trying to do to make it more family friendly.
yeah. So a combination of barracks and military housing, they've been engulfed in this scandal forever of being mold infested, right? And it is being taken a little more seriously now by Army leadership. Congress has had several hearings over the past year and investigations. The problem is those hearings and investigations are just end up being, this is a problem, right, and not actually followed up with too much. Um, and sort of the reason why this is a story is people just, they keep bringing this issue up, right? Soldiers keep talking about this, lawmakers keep talking about it, but like nothing's getting done, right? And this is one of those examples of things that are acceptable in the military that are not acceptable in the real world. I don't know what corporation you're working for that's just going to say, hey, you're going to work in this uh, black mold and just deal with it, right?
The military is really like, it's kind of a step and a half up above just like being in prison in some ways, like in just like how you're treated. Like you're here because of yourself, like whether you volunteered or whether you committed a crime, and we're going to say that you belong
Mm-hmm.
here. And like, yeah, like you said, like I in the civilian world, I would never put up with any of this shit. If like my regular civilian company sent me somewhere and we're like, hey, we got a place for you to sleep and there's black mold, I'd be like, I'm on a plane leaving right now. You people are insane.
Yeah.
I know how much, and the real thing that kills me is like with my civilian company, it's like, I know how much money you make, so no, I'm not going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's never happened because my civilian company is very large. It has a lot of money. It spends money on, when I have to travel, it's like, yeah, stay at this nice hotel that doesn't have black
Mm-hmm.
mold.
Yeah.
We are every year given like the exact, like, here's how much money we're giving to the government for military and defense. And Steve, you're in the military. Have you ever, like, those numbers keep going up, but man, I never see any of that money. Never once in my entire training, anything like that. We're always scrimping and saving and trying to, get to the next budget year so we get money. Like there's a couple years where like, oh, we have extra, we have to spend it really quick. But for the most part, it's just like, okay, I can send 2 of you guys to sergeant school. The rest of them, I don't know. Get fucked, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, there are some barracks renovations, and there are some places like I think Belvoir has it. Fort Hood has built some new barracks. Alaska's built some new barracks, but this issue is getting fixed at a snail's pace, right? So, like one soldier I talked to in the story, his pregnant wife was in the ER because there was so much mold in their house, right? And it even goes, her and the baby are okay now. And it even goes beyond that, like all their furniture smells like mold now. They got to get new stuff. So this is costing some poor NCO thousands of dollars to get new couches and clothes, and obviously they're worried about the baby right now. But this is just unacceptable. And kind of at the heart of all this are these housing companies that are just not fixing these issues. This is a story because it's a constant story. I think so. Someone made a joke on Reddit, was just like some along the lines of, "I'll read this story once a month," and I just like responded to him and be like, "Okay, well, I should probably write about this twice a month now, because just no one seems to care about this." And this is actual readiness, because this is a health issue of soldiers right now.
Yeah, of all the things for Congress and senators to worry about, like the hour a week spent on wokeness training or whatever it is that they're concerned about, it's like we're just like giving spores to our troops, and not like in a fun experimental way where they're going to turn into mold monsters or something. No, they're just going to die. And I know this I know that the military is really pushing more of, as I said, when I say family friendly, I mean friendly to families, not like hey, we're going to paint the M2 machine guns, pink and purple to make them more fun. They want to make it so that people say, yes, I can safely and effectively raise a normal child while also serving the country, because that never seems like it's possible. At least not if you don't have a partner who is just as committed to this nonsense as you are.
Yeah, and there's a survey that came out recently, surveying military families, and like the top issue that they it was like almost 70% of families did not recommend military life, and one of the top reasons are living conditions. The Army's talking a big game right now of being more family friendly. They've issued some smart policies, mainly around pregnancy, parenthood, miscarriage sort of stuff, but it's so much lacking right now to raise a family in the military. Your house is covered in mold. You can't get daycare, right? And the job market around these bases are terrible for your spouse. So
you got this white van full of a bunch of Jesus freaks who keep asking you to come to the church. It's terrible.
Yeah, if the mold doesn't get you, the cult will.
I mean, that's what. Talk about a cult recruitment tool. Just walk in and like, you know what? We don't have mold. You want to come live with us?
No, that's a legitimate thing. Like, it sounds like a joke, but like if you're living in a mold infested shithole, right? And then just someone comes to you and says, "Hey, like Jesus is cool. Do you want to come hang out with him at this building down the street?" You go, like, I would. Like, I don't want to breathe in the mold and get sick. I'll go hang out at the church and mow the lawn for them. That's an excellent recruiting tactic for them. So this mold and health issue can hit the military in multiple different ways like that. You got the health issue, you got recruitment, which recruitment's a disaster right now. Nobody wants to join the military. The Army has to, lower its end strength numbers by about 14,000 next year. And then you got them hitting on, the general, recruitment of groups you don't want your service members involved in because standard of living is terrible.
Yeah, and I'm glad that they are trying to build new barracks, and I know I know people in the construction industry, and that's as far as I'm going to go with it. But I know people who help bid a lot of the military projects for barracks and things like that. There's it's great. They're building it to last longer. just throwing tile and linoleum, because mold does not grow on that shit. Yeah. And it's easier to clean and, easier to do all these things with. But, it's great to build new barracks, but if you're not actually doing something with the old barracks, and I mean, every soldier, I did 20 years, even in 2001, when I was in, we were joking about, having to go stay at the World War II barracks and go breathe in the mold. And you're still talking about barracks that are like 60 years old back then. They're 80 years old now. You still got to stay in them sometimes,
Yeah.
and they're right next to vents, so you just have like mold getting blown out with the air conditioning just all over you. It's
Yeah.
fantastic.
And it's gotten so bad at Stewart. This didn't make it in the story because, of course, I got the response to my questions for the story after the story publishes. It's a classic trick PAOs do, right? And they just give me, just a general canned response, right? But then part of it was, and I want to look into this, so I'll have something for you later, maybe, where they are certifying soldiers with the state of Georgia to be able to clean mold, right? So the soldier shows up at Fort Stewart, right? Hey, here's your rucksack. Here's your orders. Oh, by the way, on Tuesday you got to go get certified how to scrub mold off walls with the state because you're going to be living in it.
Hey,
Like
you know,
that is not a good way to welcome a soldier. So Fort Stewart effectively probably has like the mold battalion, right? He has these group of soldiers that are in fairness, I guess you're teaching soldiers a trade they could use when they get out of the army, but that's a terrible message. Like, hey, welcome to the army. By the way, you need to get certified to clean your own barracks because it's a hazardous waste.
but hey, you know what? That's continuing education.
Fair.
That's helping. I'm not going to say that that's the perfect solution, obviously, because like your soldiers shouldn't be having to clean their own living space. I mean, look, to a certain point, yes, they should have to be cleaning their own living spaces,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, but they should walk into something that's at least serviceable.
Yes. Yeah.
And I don't know how mold works. Like maybe it's because Georgia is so humid and it just sticks to the drywall or the plaster or whatever. Like I don't know what it is that's causing this problem, but it does feel like people have been living in these areas forever. I kind of feel like somebody should know, hey, if we want to prevent mold, here's the things that we have to do. And even if it is like, we need to have somebody who is trained to, clean all these things, you get a contractor. Like the military loves to contract people out. So just do that. But of course, the problem with a contractor comes down to like, because a sergeant can make a private do anything, right? Because it's, that's how the army works. Hey, private, go do this thing, go clean that shit because I'm the sergeant. I told you that. The problem is the sergeant can't tell a contractor that because the contractor will be like, I don't work for you, sergeant, go fuck yourself. So, as against the idea of like, well, now soldiers have to learn how to do all this stuff. Like, I do also feel like that is probably going to be the easiest and most effective way of dealing with this is just be like, look, nobody else is coming to do this. If you want to not be sucking in mold, here's what we have to do to clean it up. And as long as it is something, and as long as everything is provided, and as long as it doesn't require any sort of like structural change, which is my concern, is that it would require like removing drywall and redoing drywall, which I don't want soldiers doing. Because look, not everybody know. Look, I know everybody's gonna tell you hanging drywall is easy, but like they told me that about waxing the floors, and they still fucked that up in basic training. So
I mean, and this goes into a general readiness issue, right? You got an infantryman. He needs to go to the range. He needs to do PT. He has all these like online things he needs to do, and now he's ripping drywall down. It's like soldiers can only do so much with their time. Like there is a breaking point, and again, this kind of goes to the recruiting issue where it's just like, why would you want to join the army when like you Google army and then you see like my story of soldiers living in mold and now they're ripping drywall down. And then you're thinking is like, Jesus, I just want to jump out of helicopters and shoot bad guys, and and this is what reality is. It's just not a good look.
Yeah, it's not, and you certainly do get to jump out of helicopters and stuff. The problem is that once you jump out of the helicopter and dislocate your leg, you're gonna get drummed out on a medical, and then all of a sudden these guys in a van are gonna say, "Hey, 80%'s good, but you know what's better? 95%."
Yeah, see, it all comes full circle.
It's all look, you're just jumping from one cult to another one, and at least the church cult will I don't know, hopefully feed you and not give you mold infested barracks. I don't know. We could go in there and maybe the soldiers are perfectly fine with mold infested barracks because they're just like, well, I live with this here. I might as well live with it here too.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, Steve. Well, thank you so much for coming on to talk about your articles. Looking forward to any follow up that comes with this church because that's a brand new one on me, and I don't we like cults, but we don't like cults, right? Like a cult it's a fascinating thing to look at, but obviously people are getting screwed over, and that's not cool. whether they're troops or whether they're not troops. It's not cool to fuck people over for your own benefits.
Yeah.
The calling card of this show is right there. So
Awesome, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. Steve, tell people where they can find you.
They can find my articles on military.com and follow me on Twitter at Stephen Beynon.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Steve, and everybody else. We'll talk to you next week.
Excellent. Thank you.